My name's Trish McBride. I've lived in Wellington since 1959. I think that nearly makes me a Wellingtonian. I'm currently living in Broadmeadows. And my journey with AIDS took place in the 1990s. I was a born and bred Catholic of the traditional mould, with all that goes with that, and that led me into becoming a workplace chaplain. So I went into workplaces and formed relationships, got to know people, so that if something came up along the way, they already knew somebody, but we weren't there to do any Bible bashing. It was simply a case of go and be there and listen. And so after 3 years of that, in 1990, I was told by the staff person who had wrestled dreadfully with his responsibilities that one of the staff had AIDS. The staff person had struggled with confidentiality, but was also feeling responsible for the well-being of his other staff, as well as wanting the person to have support. And anyway, ultimately I was told, and it was a young guy that I was already, quite friendly with, and so it was a case of acknowledging to him what had happened. He was disappointed in the staff clerk, but I was there then as a support to him. Got to know his mum, his siblings, his partner, and they both had AIDS by that stage. That family blew my mind. They were into unconditional love. Dad was dead. Mum said, I think he'd have found it hard. But as of now, this family does unconditional love. His partner is my son-in-law. The nieces and nephews simply had two uncles. It was just so easy, so easy. So they taught me a huge amount, and I met some of the members of their peer support group. This was all a bit scary for me. It's like there was a huge amount of fear in the community, and I was not immune to that. When I first found out what was going on, I hot-footed it to Paula Brett Kelly, who was a nun working at Awhina Centre, the AIDS Foundation, and whom I already knew, coming from the good Catholic background, because the sisters that she belonged to had taught my children. So she mentored me in a most astonishing way and made a lot of things a lot easier. And my supervisor in the workplace chaplaincy thing had also had involvement with the AIDS Foundation, because somebody that she knew, she had worked through with the partner after his partner died, and her words to me were, get in there and love and you'll be the one to gain. So I was scared. There's only, 3 ways you can catch this thing, so you don't have to be afraid. But what if medical science is wrong? It has been known to be wrong before. So you take a deep breath and jump off the cliff and be there. And one of the amazing times was sharing a communion with my supervisor and the man that she was working with, which meant sharing the chalice, which meant just doing it and knowing this incredible power that was with us at that stage. So, 1991, I was encouraged by Supervisor and Paula to go to the Candlelight Memorial, which was in Parliament Grounds. And the picture I've given you, it was dark. I was still scared. It was calm. We lit candles. And then there's one of the most astonishing pieces of theatre that I have ever in my life encountered. Down the steps from Hill Street and up the main driveway came processions of flaming torches. Now, they weren't little. The sticks so long, a good metre long, with kerosene rags on top and flames like that. It was like a medieval spectacle, and that whole connection with plague, flames, medieval, and then it was just so mind-blowing. And then they stood in a circle in the forecourt of Parliament and called out the 176 names of people who at that stage had died. And there were speeches. Tom O'Donoghue, whose name I'm sure has surfaced in this project, he was the first person I'd ever heard say publicly, I'm HIV positive. And Hetty Rodenberg, Dr. Hetty Rodenberg, who was a GP who dealt with a lot of the guys, she said there's a cure for AIDS. It's love, because the love drives out the fear. So, you know, it's like that still has the power to, do all sorts of things. Anyway, I was on my way home from this massive event. Oh, and the bell at the Anglican Cathedral tolled 176 times, one for each person, and there was a choir singing from Fouray's Requiem, Dona Nobis Pacem, and then there were the fireworks displays. And yeah, it was just huge, just huge. And a guy who said that Tom had persuaded him to tell his mum because he'd been scared and hadn't. But once he'd done it, it was all okay. So, you know, those just amazing memories. And on the way home, I suddenly thought, my God, it's Pentecost Sunday. And Pentecost is the Christian festival where the huddle of scared disciples had tongues of flame over them. And they found their courage, and they went out and they spoke their truth. And it was like, I have just seen this happening all over again. And I'm a bit less so now, but back then I was paranoid about public speaking. But the next Sunday at church, I had to get up and tell people about this, so it sort of did it to me too. Anyway, later that year, both of the men that I knew died. Just a privilege being with them right through. Then I found as I was preparing a few notes that funerals became a theme because they were all different. I was asked to put together some prayers for one of the guys' funerals, and I wrote one that said, this is a Catholic funeral, please could the church open its mind and heart to the gay community. And in those days, I don't know whether it still is because I'm not there now, you have to show the priest the prayers you've put together. He looked at that, he said, you're not saying that. It's too political. And so I had the choice of either defying him, which I was sorely tempted to do, or going, hang on, this guy is jittery, he's got a church full of gay men, he's on edge. If he's even more on edge, it's not going to do the family any good. So, okay, I will not do it. But still, all this time later, I'm telling you the story.